Hello, and welcome to The Fool and the Philosopher.
The Philosopher and the Fool. There is a documentary, it's like the Paving of Canada or something. Benjamin Boyce interviewed them. I don't know how accurate it is, but it's an interesting story. Which is, so World War II happens, and now we're in post-World War II. And the UN is made. And one of the things they want is immigration to start happening. Now, this is in the 60s, I think, right? That's World War II's 60s?
World War II is 40s.
40s. Okay. Yeah, so after World War II, so we're in the 50s.
Yeah.
UN wants people to start taking immigrants, and Louis Saint Laurent and Mackenzie King, like those people, the predecessors, but Louis Saint Laurent is basically told you should start taking immigrants. And I don't know why he did it, but politically it wasn't popular in Canada. It was 65% didn't want immigrants from Europe.
Yeah.
And those were the only acceptable immigrants in Canada. The immigrants that were acceptable in Canada were British...
And Americans?
French. No, Americans weren't acceptable.
Oh, wow.
It was British, French, and French colonists. And Commonwealth colonists.
Like Australians and New Zealand.
Yeah, but it wasn't the Aboriginal Australians.
Yeah.
It was Australians that came from the UK.
Right.
So that's who was acceptable in Canada. No one else. But there was a push to add some more people. And so a sort of acceptable middle ground was other Europeans, and kind of pushing what was acceptable was Eastern Europeans.
Right.
Eastern Europeans were not popular, but it's like, okay, we will take them in. And so, the UN basically said, no, you need to take people from Africa, you need to take people from all over the world. This is the new thing, you need to have immigration. And so Louis Saint Laurent knew that this wasn't popular in Canada. And so he moved to have people immigrate to Canada without Canadians knowing it.
Oh.
Basically, they never reported about it, they never told news reporters, they just had people immigrate without consensus, without a vote. So 65% of Canada was against immigration. And so the person who took over after him was a conservative, and this guy is being called like the worst, like the traitorous conservative, whatever. And he has a really epic name I can't remember right now. He's a German prime minister after Louis Saint Laurent. He's the 14th prime minister, I think.
14th? Have we only had that many? I thought we've had a lot.
No, we've had like around 20.
No, I think Trudeau's like 40-something, isn't he?
No, we haven't had that many. We had a year where we had like 4 in a row.
I know like King was in for like a millennia.
Yeah, we literally had a year where we had 4 in a row.
Yeah, well there's Mulrooney and Campbell and the other two. Yeah.
He had an epic name, but so he's a German Canadian. He's of German descent. And because after World War II, there was a lot of dislike for German Canadians. There's a lot of prejudice and racism against them. And so this man was a staunch anti-racist. He wanted to get rid of hyphenated Canadians. So you're French Canadian, you're German Canadian.
Right, you're just Canadian.
Yeah, you're just Canadian. And his solution to this was destroying the Canadian identity. Because the Canadian identity until that point was you were French Canadian or you're British Canadian.
Yeah.
And all the other immigrants, what you had to do is if you're a German Canadian, you either became French Canadian or you became English Canadian. That is what you should have done joining Canada.
Right.
But he wanted to destroy hyphenated Canadianism. And so he had secret goals of the amount of immigrants to bake in, and he started a bunch of anti-racism programs and bringing in more Africans, bringing in black people, bringing in Asians, because there's this huge anti-Asian sentiment because people just didn't want them. They wanted Canada, like, we grow our population naturally. We don't want these people coming in and ruining our culture. And so they had a goal at one point to bring in 1,500 immigrants a year. And they didn't want Canadians to know about it. But if Canadians happen to know about it, they had a backup plan, which is it's good for our economy. It grows GDP.
1,500, you said?
150,000.
Ah, okay. I was like, that sounds reasonable.
150,000 per year.
Yeah, that's a lot more.
And so if they do find out about it, which they inevitably did, the line was, this grows our economy. And that's what he told us. That's what we were told. And the predecessors after him also continued this program. And so over time, basically Canada, whenever they're asked during these periods, do you like immigration? Do you support immigration? Do you want immigrants in the country? What's your opinions of immigrants? It was always 2 out of 3 Canadians didn't want immigration. They didn't like immigrants. Canada is not a country of immigration.
Yeah.
And so the British Canadian culture was getting eroded by these people coming in. Now, the French Canadians had a little bit more protection because whenever people came here, they learned English instead of French.
Yeah.
So they had that level of perfection. And then a few more ministers passed through, and we get Pierre Senior.
Pierre Trudeau.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Pierre Trudeau. And he basically, like, so people are starting to get, like, the
Father of Justin Trudeau and Pierre Poilievre.
Yeah. The crab was getting boiled. The Canadian crab was getting boiled.
Yeah.
And the French Canadians kind of realized what was happening. And the FLQ was created.
Yeah.
Because they saw their culture getting destroyed.
So that's Canada's worst terrorist organization.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, and the French Canadians had a slightly more protected culture, so it survived a lot longer. And so to appease FLQ and to appease French Canadians, they got a huge amount of appeasements basically given to them and powers, and they were allowed to keep their culture. Meanwhile, British Canadians, screw you, you're just Canadians. There's Canadians and there's French Canadians now. There's no British Canadian and French Canadian. And so Canada was a multicultural country.
Yeah.
It was British and it was French. That's what its multiculture was. And there was the First Nations as well was a part of the multiculture. And I don't know why they did it, but they brought in immigrations against Canadians' will, to the point where then the lie got propagated that Canada is a country of immigrants. And that's what people are told. We're a country of immigrants. Immigrants built Canada. Canada's a country of immigrants. And if you ask people, like older people, like grandparents and stuff, and this is apparently a thing that you can do, is they'll have cognitive dissonance, where it's like, think about the past and your opinions of immigration and what happened to over time. And they'll go, oh yeah, no, we didn't really want immigrants like 40, 50 years ago. But it's this sort of like massive psyop lie. And it's one of the things is we were never told about. But because there's so many now, and we have very powerful communication, I feel like Canada's partly going, okay, so we're being told we're a country of immigrants, but this is destroying us.
I don't know if I ever mentioned, I read The Great Reset by Klaus Schwab and his co-writer, whoever they happen to be.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure the co-writer was Yusuf Harari, Noah Harari, because it is very similar to his other books.
Yeah.
You know, the same garbage, pulling together a bunch of stats to make your argument sort of thing. And I don't know if I ever talked about it on the podcast or not, but the main idea of the Great Reset and the World Economic Forum, they really want globalism because they don't want any more war. And they figure if companies are all economically dependent on each other, then they won't fight each other because it would be too costly to go to war.
Yeah.
So they're these very high-minded idealists at core. And I wonder if it's a similar idea for the immigration. It might not be economically, but it might be, well, we wouldn't go to war with Russia if half our citizens are Russians.
The economics is the excuse.
Right.
It's the excuse you give. However, they've said the excuse for so long they believe it.
But like the real reason might be like they're trying to stop war or something. Yeah. From a sort of like, oh yeah, we know better than everyone and therefore this will stop war. And because, or it could be, well, part of it I think, so this happened to me at my job recently. I don't know if I talked about this, but I have, so for my job, I have 3 assistants. Yeah. I have a 15-year-old girl, a 16-year-old boy, and a 22-year-old woman.
Yeah.
So 22-year-old woman and me obviously get along the best of those 3 because we're actually of a similar age. And she's from a small enough tiny community that we also have a similar generational culture, right? Because, you know, the more remote you are, the further back in the past your people are, right? So we're actually quite similar that way. So we were able to get along quite well. Yeah. And so we work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays. The girl, then the boy, then the woman. Yeah. The company I work for, they were like, we need a female employee, because we do archery, right? Yeah. But we need a female employee to do the Arctic Games. Arctic Games are stuff like doing high kicks and seal crawl, and they're a lot of pain sports. Yeah. They're sports about overcoming pain. And so they said, we need a female coach for those. So we're going to take her away from you, and we're going to put her on those jobs. Because she's a female, and we need a female coach. Yeah. So she's like a pro archer, like she's been to big tournaments and stuff. Yeah. She goes to Vegas. She hates Arctic sports, and she's never done them since she was like 6 years old.
Yeah.
So now I don't have the assistant that I'm close with. I have an empty slot, so I have to make my 16-year-old assistant work twice as hard. And now she's working on something she doesn't like and doesn't know anything about. And I think that's the same idea, right? It's human resources, right? Humans are fungible. Oh, well, we need a human female. There's a human female, without taking into account, hey, if both our employees like each other, they're going to have a better time and they're going to stick around. They're not going to quit.
Yeah.
Because this work is where they go to see a friend.
Yeah.
But but if you look at them and also these are people that know archery. So we need to have the archers there, right? And also the class is full of 17-year-olds. So now you have a 16-year-old teaching 17-year-olds because you got rid of your 22-year-old.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, well they're all just people and we need a female, not a male, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's the same thing. It's like, well, if you have more people, you make more money. And so therefore you just get more people.
Yeah, and part of it is population growth. However, one of the greatest population growth periods in Canada that happened in Alberta was all births in Canada during the baby boom, where we had a massive spike.
Have you seen
But it's kind of insane, the destruction of the British Canadian culture. Like, is actually being murdered.
So it was like yesterday or 2 days ago, the population statistics for the Yukon came out.
Yeah.
47,000.
Wow.
That was like, I thought it was slightly under 40,000.
I thought it was like 38.
So it's 47,000. When I was a kid, it was 27,000.
Yeah.
It went up like 20% in the last year. Like it's crazy how fast it's growing. It might even be more than 20%. Like it is shooting up. Now, the funny thing about the Yukon is this isn't the fastest growth rate ever for the Yukon. But I don't think we'll ever beat the fastest because the gold rush was kind of ridiculous. Yeah. And then there was actually in the 50s as well, after the war, for some reason, just like it was like 50% growth.
Yeah.
A huge amount of people came in. But like gold rush was like, what, like 1,000,000% growth or something?
Yeah.
Like it was ridiculous. But yeah, 47,000 of a place that used to be 27,000 in a fairly short lifetime.
Yeah.
So it's, and that's just one place. Canada is just, the amount of people is crazy that are.
Yeah, well, it's. So,
and then I think it's the banks, right? Like CIBC is pushing for this for some reason. I don't know why, but they really, really seem to be pushing for this sort of thing.
Well, so beyond what is happening, what has happened, and I can't source anything I've said, but sources are lame.
I don't know. I think they're really handy.
Yes. And I think they're more needed for historical things like that. Because I think actually a certain amount of things can be based on vibes. And what I mean by that is how you feel about it is actually more important than the facts.
Yeah.
It's like there's a reason I'm feeling this way, so even if the facts disagree with the way I feel...
I think there could be a good reason for Canada to have 100 million Canadians. Yeah. Right? Like I think that might be a very... Because one of the advantages of having a larger population is it increases our GDP.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't increase it per person. It can actually make it poorer per person, and it has been making it poorer per person, right? But when you're thinking on a geopolitical scale, when you're interacting with other countries and making deals with other countries, they listen to you not based on how rich your people are, but how powerful your country is, right? Yeah. So that's why countries like Russia and China are superpowers. It's not because their people are all really rich. It's because the country is super rich.
Yeah.
So if we get more people, we get to stay on the world stage and get... So from a high-minded leadership point of view, top down, you're like, yeah, no, I want my country to be really strong. So you could say there's a very good reason to have 100 million Canadians.
Yeah.
The problem with the mass immigration, especially from like India, Nigeria, and other places like that aren't the UK.
Yeah.
Or the States, I think, at this point.
Yeah.
Problem with taking people from there is they're not Canadians. And if you take them too fast, they'll never be Canadians. And then your country, you don't have a powerful country of 100 million. You have a war zone of 100 million.
You have a bunch of states.
You have like we already like our provinces are federated, so they get to control. There's I was sort of joking about like little policy changes earlier. But one of the ones we do have, I was just reading about it today because Pierre Poilievre has been pushing this.
Yeah.
He wants to get rid of the tariffs between provinces.
Yeah.
Because it would increase Canada's GDP by like 7%. Make all Canadians, I think, what was it? It's like $20 billion or something. Like, make the country a ton of money. So, wow, that's a great idea. But the interesting thing is, so Pierre really wants to push for this, right?
Yeah.
Justin Trudeau passed a law pushing for it. Like the guy we have right now, pushed law. His law was based on Harper's law, which was trying to push for it. Harper based his law on the guy before him who was really pushing. Prime ministers have been pushing for this for like 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
The problem is they have no power over the provinces.
Yeah.
And the provinces, like BC is like, no, I don't want Ontario wine. And Ontario's like, no, I don't want BC wine.
Alberta's like, I really want to put my oil in Ontario. And Ontario's like, I really want Alberta's oil. And Quebec goes, no.
Yeah. There's someone you forgot to ask.
Yes. And so that's why it goes down through the states and then back up.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is the actual reason why.
What was that statistic? It's like Alberta produces like 30% of Canada's wealth on their own or something.
Yeah.
And Quebec gets like half of it.
Yes.
It's like the money drain from Alberta to Quebec is ridiculous.
So what is a Canadian? Because I know what a French Canadian is.
A miserable pile of secrets. But enough talk. How to? An adult human female.
Actually, like a Canadian or a British Canadian, because I think that's what Canadian actually is.
Canadian is someone who forms a line, who says thank you when you hold the door open for them, who enjoys hockey, who, well, this one's tricky. I would say like enjoys the outdoors, snowmobiling, that sort of thing. But the problem with that one is Ontario exists.
They're frontiersmen is more, because even Ontario is a frontier.
I guess, but Ontario's... I want to give like Southern Ontario to the United States. Like, they're not Canadians. Like, just go away. Go be cosmopolitan. I want to give them to London even. They could just be a district of London. Like, they're like half our country, and they're not Canadians, right? They live in their little city in their cosmopolitan world. They have no idea what the second biggest country on earth is like, right? Like, they live in like Toronto and Montreal. Like, they live in two cities, and they dictate the second biggest country on earth.
That's why Alberta's so resentful. Like you said, the 30% of the wealth.
Yeah.
Alberta doesn't have a big enough population. They're doing all the work, and they're getting controlled.
Yeah. Like, Alberta, at least. Alberta's actually a frontier, right?
Yeah.
Like, now, maybe Edmonton a bit less so, but even Edmonton, like, the people from Edmonton are still a bit more hardcore cowboy types that have actually been out in the wilderness.
Well, they do the Stampede. That's their big cultural event.
Yeah, they actually have something. And I think this is something to keep in mind when you talk about Canadian culture. Canadian culture is also not throwing rocks at women for wearing bikinis at the beach. Yeah. And Canadian culture is not killing your daughter because she had 2 boyfriends in like 3 months.
Yeah.
Like, there's things that we take for granted that are not...
There's positive and negative.
Yeah. But there are things around the world that are normal that we don't do in Canada.
Yeah.
For instance, Canadian culture, this is something that's common like everywhere in the world, basically, except for Western world, which I would call what? The inheritors of Rome, the inheritors of Cicero's law, sort of ethics maybe. But we don't go and extract blood libels. Like if a Russian man, let's say, in Canada goes and he shoots a Canadian person, we don't go to Russia and kill 3 Russians. Yeah. We go, okay, this Russian man should go to prison because we serve the sentence to the person that did the crime. Yeah. We don't go extract it from his family or from not even his family, but people that look like him. Yeah. Right? Like, we don't do that. So these are things that's very common around the world. We don't do that here. So I think that's something that we just take for granted when you live in it so long. You're like, oh yeah, and you have Christmas holidays, and it's like, yeah, that's just what you do, right? It's like, no, that's Canadian. Halloween, very Canadian. Yes. Only 2 countries do Halloween, really, which is the United States and Canada, and the rest of the world looked on us with envy, and now they start doing them.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah, Canadian and American again.
Our Thanksgiving is very different than theirs.
Well, it's earlier, sorry. Yeah. Yeah.
It's also a slightly different event, but yeah. And there's a thing that people have been saying recently.
We hate French people.
Well, there's been a thing, so there's the hating French people, but there's the only thing that Canadians seem to have as culture is they're not American. Yeah. Well, that I don't think that's actually a Canadian cultural aspect.
No, and that was actually enforced by the government. Yeah. I don't know if you know about this, but that was actually a governmental.
That's partly the purpose of the CBC.
Yeah. Well, that was the CRT and the C and the CBC. Yeah. So it was Trudeau, I believe, actually, like the old Trudeau. He or maybe it was someone else, but I think it was Trudeau. They had this big push because Americans and Canadians. So there's this was J.J. McCullough talked about this. Mm. He's Canadian conservative. Yeah. Well, I guess he's technically conservative YouTuber. Yeah. You wouldn't think he's conservative at all from what he talks about.
Does he have the big floofy hair that hangs out and he's gay?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. I mean, you wouldn't think he's gay or conservative because he doesn't talk about that stuff, right? Yeah. He just talks about Canadian history mostly. So one thing he pointed out was that was a big push so it was Hemingway. Yeah. All American man, author, right? One of America's heroes, original American heroes. He talks about his life in his book, and he doesn't talk about immigration or emigration, right? But he says, I spent a few years in Irving, and then I moved to Vancouver for a few years.
Yeah.
Spent a year in Manitoba, and then I moved to Washington, right?
Yeah.
He wasn't going to a different country. He was just going to the cities, right?
Yeah.
Like North America consider themselves still sort of, because we were once both part of the Brits, right?
Yeah.
Like, so it's not like we have this deep rift in us.
Yeah, it is.
We remain loyal to the
We were
crown.
part of the Brits. We integrated the French. We kicked out the Spanish.
Yeah, and they didn't. Yeah.
No, they did. What do you think the War of 1812...
No, the Americans didn't kick out the Spanish.
No, they did. That's them fighting Mexico and capturing all that land.
Yeah, but they kept all the Spanish people, didn't they?
No, the Spanish people kept themselves. They kept trying to get back in because they really liked it.
And I think Cubans are automatically citizens of Florida or something. Like, how much more American does that get? Like, and they have Puerto Rico. They took Puerto Rico on purpose.
Yeah.
Probably. Maybe it was an accident. But they
No, they kicked out the Spanish. The Spanish just keep coming back. There's a whole thing about that right now in America.
Right.
A lot of people are really upset about it on both sides.
But anyways, they're basically the same country, right?
Yeah.
Like or the same. It's not even. They're different countries, but the border was more fluid. It's like I'm not moving to a different place. I'm just going to a different. I'm going to Vancouver, and then I'm going to go to Washington, and then I'm going to go to, like, there was a continuum from Canada to the United States, and we were loyalists to the crowns. They weren't.
Yeah.
A bunch of Americans fled to Canada during 1776.
Yeah, and a bunch of Canadians went to America.
Or was there
Oh, yeah.
anti-crown Canadians?
Yes.
Traitors?
Yep.
What do you call them? Yeah.
There's traitors to the crown.
Yeah, we should dig up their family records and figure out who should hang. But there was a big push to have a Canadian identity and to, Canadian content was that huge push, and which has now hit YouTube, where you have to. Although I haven't seen any.
It's impacted me.
Yeah, you think it has?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, a law passed, and certain recommendation things on my channel have gone down.
I haven't. I wouldn't know because I started after, right? So
Yeah.
I can't really tell. But yeah, we have this Canadian content law where you have to have Canadian content on YouTube now served first, which essentially means you're showing your stuff to the Americans, and our movies have to have.
It's not like the biggest impact, but I have noticed it.
Our movies need a certain percentage of Canadian employees and our radio shows, and basically what it does is it means that big companies like CTV and CBC, they're fine because they can afford to hire it. And little people that maybe they'll hire a Mexican editor or an American editor, they can't afford it anymore, and their channel dies. And it's basically all regulations. There's the libertarian one. But most regulations, let's say, are designed by giant companies to prevent competition from rising up against them.
Yeah.
Because the competition can't afford to follow the same rules. For instance, in the dairy industry, for each product you sell, like cheese, milk, cream, you need a separate building to produce it in. So if you're you have your cow at home and you're like, I want to sell some milk to my neighbors.
Yeah.
It's like, well, okay, well then you need your milk building, and then you need your cream building, and then you need. It's like, I can't build 3 buildings. I just want to sell milk to my neighbors.
Yeah.
Because our milk industry is basically the Canadian version of the mafia.
Yeah, it's called the dairy cartel.
The mafia.
It's the dairy cartel.
Did you know Canada already has tariffs on the United States?
Yes, 350% tariff.
Yeah.
On dairy products.
Yeah, like we can't buy American.
They can't get cheese from the cheese cave.
I don't know if you've noticed that Americans are complaining about the price of eggs. Like they're like, oh, the eggs are like $7 a dozen. Whoa.
Ours are like 12.
Yeah, they're like theirs have doubled in price, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, it's $7 a dozen, and ours are 12. I was talking to a Romanian, and he's like, yeah, it's worse here.
Yeah.
It's like America has the cheapest food on earth, and I mean, you have if you have the cheapest food on earth and it doubles in price, you're going to complain. But the crazy thing is, their food has doubled in price, and it's still the cheapest food on earth.
This Callum was talking with that guy who lives in Finland. He's a geneticist that lives in Finland. Okay, I can't remember his name, but Callum was talking about how decadent the Americans are.
Yeah.
And he explained to this other guy, because they're both British, what garbage disposal is.
Yeah.
It's like, so you're in, you have your garbage can, like you have your kitchen mess, and you put it in the garbage can, and then your garbage gets picked up once a week. But you don't want to deal with that because your garbage stinks.
Yeah.
So what you do instead is you have in your sink this blades that spin, and you put your garbage into those blades, and it cuts them up, and so they can then be processed into your sewage system, so you don't have to deal with the inconvenience of having a stinky garbage can.
Yeah.
And that is something Americans have.
Yeah, a garburator or whatever they call it, right?
Yeah. And
I only know there's a movie where like
it's like every single one of their houses has air conditioners in it. It's like Americans are ridiculously decadent.
I saw this video. It was a guy talking about graphics cards,
Yeah.
and he's talking about how graphics cards have increased in power massively over the last 20 years.
Yeah.
And video games have not increased in fidelity by nearly the same margin.
Yeah.
And he was showing a modern game that actually looked worse than a game from 2012.
Yeah.
And even though that game was getting bragged about for how good it looked and the crazy graphics card you need to run it.
Yeah.
And he was pointing out, the reason this is this way is because there's a light system, there's a there's a ray tracing system, there is a polygonal system, and something else that haven't been optimized in the slightest.
Yeah.
And if you optimize them to be like a 2012 game, you could use like a 1030 graphics card. You wouldn't need a 5090.
Well, if you want to talk about optimization, using the CRT
the
thing to
monitor,
turn stuff 3D.
But
I saw a video comparing that. It's insane.
No, it's huge, the difference. But with the point with this isn't about the optimization.
Yeah.
But in the comments, someone was saying, yeah, but why don't you just, like, it's not like the graphics cards are expensive, just buy a 5090. And someone said, so this is something that, because it was talking about Linus Tech Tips as well, and they were confused about Linus Tech Tips, complaining about the price. And this guy was saying, so if you're an American working a minimum wage job, like you're sweeping floors in a place, right? You can buy a high-end graphics card after a couple of weeks of work.
Yeah.
You can't do that in Canada.
Yeah.
Like, this is something for like upper middle class people that this is their hobby, right?
Yeah.
You don't buy the latest graphics card unless you're really, really into it. But if you're just like, you just have like a job at McDonald's in America, you can get one. Like when you actually look at the difference in wealth between Americans and Canadians, like you think, yeah, we're the same, right? And then you actually look into some of the stuff, like video game prices, right?
Yeah.
They have these $70 video games. Our video games are now like $100.
Yeah.
And yeah, but it's a Canadian dollar. Yeah, but Canadian dollar is actually worth more to a Canadian than American dollar is worth to an American.
Yeah.
Because everything costs so much more, and we don't even make like like an American. What's the average? It's like the Americans make $60,000 US a year or something, and Canadians make like 30,000.
Yeah.
Like, so you could say our money in a way is worth half, like twice as much to us. So $100 Canadian is like $200 American in terms of perceived value by the person. Yeah. Like, now I think the American statistic is inflated by their massive amount of billionaires.
Yeah.
So it's probably not actually true to that extent, but even if it's 1-to-1, we're paying way more for everything. And that's before you look at our food is like 2 to 3 times as expensive, which our food should be more expensive. It's not as nice a place for growing it, right?
Like, if we go back to Canadian culture, like, it's, we live as far south as we can per province or territory.
Yeah.
And the further north you go, the less people there are.
Yeah.
But even then, the furthest south of Canada, excluding Alaska,
yeah,
like the Midwest Americans have this joke about, oh, they're going through these harsh winter conditions, and like the further South Americans couldn't handle the Midwest Americans' winters.
Yeah.
It's like their worst winters in the Midwest are our average winters.
I was watching, the Sitch and Adams show.
Yeah.
I've seen, someone was talking about what temperature it was in, I think, their state.
Yeah.
And they said, or maybe it was in a province or something, because they had to look it up, convert it to Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
And they're, wait, that's below the freezing temperature of water? They're freaking out.
Yeah.
So I just recently looked at the average temperature in the Yukon.
Yeah.
So, sorry, not in the Yukon, in southern Yukon, Atlin and Whitehorse.
Yeah.
Atlin's technically BC, but it's the Yukon.
Yeah.
-1. That's the year-long average temperature. Is -1.
Like,
on average, we are below freezing.
I have a friend who works in construction.
Yeah.
They're in Victoria. And there's massive winter storms in Victoria. And Victoria is like one of the most tropical places in Canada. And they can't work right now because of how cold it is.
Yeah.
And like their bad conditions is like blowing snow, storms, and -10.
Yeah.
And they then, like, if it's any one of those conditions, they can work. But it's all three at once, they can't.
Yeah.
So they're doing construction work at -10. In America, cities get shut down if it's -2.
Yeah.
Cities, not the construction industry.
Or in the case of Texas, states.
Yeah.
When they had that little bit of snow and everything just fell apart.
And so Canada, despite what we think, like culturally that is actually a part of Canada, is we live on a harsh area. We live in a harsh frontier land.
But it's also, like, there's not many countries like Canada, right? Like, there's Russia. That's basically it.
Yeah.
Because you look at the Scandinavian countries. But the thing about Scandinavian countries is they're coastal.
Yeah.
So, like Canada, we have coastal, like we have Vancouver, and we have Quebec
Yeah.
City. But that's a...
And we have Baffin Bay.
But I'm talking about like where there's
yeah.
Canadians, right? Like we've got Quebec City, we've got Vancouver. Those are our coastal cities.
Yeah.
And then I guess Manitoba it's a freshwater coast.
Yeah.
And I guess Toronto is as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's not quite the same thing. But I guess it is. It's a temperature regulator. Yeah. But that's why I don't think
And we have Halifax.
But I don't think they're real Canadians because of, like, Canada is not a coastal country. Like, you look at the interior of Canada.
Yeah.
That's not a lot of coast. That's like a giant bunch of not coast, right?
Yeah, it's mountains and...
Like, Norway is a long, skinny line. It has like, more coast than anywhere else on Earth. So, like, but there's not many countries where you have this great big interior that is also super, super cold. Like, Russia's... But Russia has the same problem we have, where Moscow isn't that super cold.
No.
Now, Moscow isn't coastal, to be fair, but most of Russia is...
Russia cannot into sea.
Yeah, but, well, they can into a cold sea.
Yeah.
I saw on Political Compass memes, there's a great... So it showed the... it's like lib-left and... so which is left-wing freedom, right? And then authoritarian right. And so it's... I don't know if you've seen the goose meme where the goose is chasing the man.
Yep.
And so the man is the authoritarian right to represent the United States government. Yeah. And he's running away. And the goose is chasing him. It's like, why is Canada and Greenland so valuable now, huh? What's happening that's making Canada and Greenland so valuable? Why do you want them all of a sudden? Yeah. It's like, because, climate change, right?
Yeah.
It's like, what's going on that makes suddenly you really want these countries?
It's Northwest Passage. Yeah. The most deadly passage on Earth.
And also, NWT, the Yukon, and Northern Greenland have tons of resources.
They're all fine.
And that you can actually get at now without dying. Yeah. Although, I don't...
Logistically, they still suck.
Yeah, like, I don't really think it'll help in the Yukon that much.
So, do you know what the peel was about? Why they wanted to mine the peel?
Diamonds?
No.
Oil?
No.
Gold.
It has iron.
Yeah.
And it has coal. You can pick the coal off the ground.
We have...
It has... the peel has a huge amount of iron and a huge amount of coal. So the plan was, in the peel, to turn it into a steel manufactory. The problem with that is steel is really heavy. So even if you build the buildings there on site, and you do the manufacturing of the coal and the steel, let's just ignore the environmental and the beautiful landscape, and like no one ever goes there, so why would they care? Logistically, that steel would be worthless.
Couldn't you put them on the river and like...
No. That river is not transportable by barges.
Oh, I guess it's pretty rapidy, isn't it?
Yeah. You have to trug it to the sea. So you have to go further north, which is through swamps and rivers and rocks. Or you have to bring it south, which is through swamps, rivers, and rocks and greater distance.
Airships.
Oh, you want to deal with the weather in northern Yukon?
No, this is NWT, you said. It's fine. Just,
Yeah, you want to deal with the weather in northern Canada and the mountains?
Have mosquitoes assaulting your airplanes.
Not even that. The weather is awful.
I think air balloons they're gonna make a comeback.
There is pockets of air in Canada, which is we can have a snowstorm that is 2 kilometers big in northern Canada. Yeah. That's not normal. Snowstorms are usually massive. Why we can have such small localized storms is we have all these dips and bumps and mountains. And a snowstorm can literally get caught and stuck against a mountain.
But you can just fly an airship through a storm. Like the Hindenburg went straight through that lightning storm, remember?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's fine.
But, yeah, so it's just the steel would be so expensive it won't be worth trading market value.
You know what bothers me a little bit about the PPC and why I probably won't vote for them? And also, well, the Conservatives have a talk, but they're not really like
CPC?
It. No, the People's Party of Canada.
Yeah, the PPC is People Parties and the Conservatives is the CPC.
Oh. Well, that's confusing.
Yeah.
And what's the Chinese Communist Party? CCP.
Yeah.
PCPC. Okay. Anyways, why I don't like the PPs or the CPs is because they're always going on about how the environmentalists want us to not mine and we're going to mine and we're going to make Canadians rich, right? And it's like, and they're just being silly because you need to mine, right? Yeah. So let's look at the Yukon. What this mining makes us rich, right?
Yeah.
We charge... What is like 1% or is it 0.1%?
7 cents.
Okay, it's like 7 cents an ounce on gold.
Yes, yeah. It has been set since the gold rush.
Yeah. So we charge nothing for gold, right? So companies come in, Chinese companies. Yeah. They come in
with Chinese workers.
They pay their Chinese workers with our money and take it out of the country. They take all our resources. They give us nothing in return. They poison our streams. They go bankrupt, and then they somehow all escape scot-free.
Yeah.
They form a new company, and they do it over again and over again. And it's not just Chinese. It's also Canadian companies that just don't give any money back to the people. And they bring their own Chinese workers in.
Yeah.
Or they bring American workers in.
Yeah.
Now you're like, okay, fine. They're not giving any money to the people, and they're poisoning all the lands, and they're also, that resources is just leaving the country. But at least, we need those resources. Like you can't have a world going on without, you need your nickel and your iron and your lead, because the Yukon has tons of copper and nickel, and
it has everything.
Yeah, and all they do is they get gold.
Yeah.
Gold, that's it. All they mine is gold, because nothing else is worth it to them to transport up. So they just mine gold, and
we have copper.
Yeah, we have everything.
Yes. We don't have uranium in the Yukon.
Yeah. But we've got basically everything.
Yeah.
We don't have diamonds either, I don't think.
No, we don't have diamonds.
NWT
We don't have uranium.
But
we don't have lithium.
No, we have tons of lithium.
Oh, do we?
We have like the most on Earth, I think.
Really?
Yeah. No, we've got a lot of lithium.
Yeah, we've got so much coal. We have so much iron.
Yeah. And copper out the wazoo.
Yes.
We've got, and nickel. We've got a lot of nickel. We've got a lot of lead.
One of the biggest...
We've got a lot of asbestos.
One of the biggest copper deposits in the Yukon, right under Whitehorse.
Yeah, it's Whitehorse. Whitehorse is the copper deposit.
Yeah, right under Whitehorse.
There's White River, copper mine.
Yeah.
Copper River. Those places, you could pick up boulders of copper. You know what the First Nations did around here?
Yeah, you explained to me.
They would take saws and they would just make tools.
Silver? You want silver? We got silver.
Oh, you were talking about coal, like how you can just pick it off the ground? Northern Yukon, there are cliffs made of coal that are permanently on fire.
Yeah.
Early explorers talked about the flaming cliffs. Yeah. Like, how cool is that? You're just going down the river and you see this cliff of flame.
Yeah. You want silver? Oh, we've got lots of silver. You want gold? Like you're saying, that's all we take up. We've got some of the most gold in the world still in the ground.
But what I hate, right? These aren't valuable resources.
Yeah.
We're just destroying the environment because, okay, gold is valuable in quotation marks. Yeah. But how many earbuds do you need to make?
Yes.
Gold's material use is pretty small. It's not like we're supporting the automobile industry or something. And so if I was in... Okay, here's the game, right? You're in charge of Canada. You're a tyrant. Everyone has to do what you say, all right? So... First of all, yeah, mining is good. I agree. So what we're going to do is you have to mine stuff we need, and you have to give 10% of your funds to the people that own it, right? And you also have to hire local people. And also, you have to disband the CVC. It's unrelated to the mining, but you have to get rid of the CVC.
Oh, it is related to the mining.
And
they would say, no, you can't do that.
And also, zero immigration for 5 years. No, I'll be kind, because, there's always some people looking to come in. You can have 1,867 people per year for 5 years. After that point,
you have to be a British or French citizen,
and you're only 1,867 people per year, anyways. And that's the year our country was founded. Just it's poetic.
Yeah,
it's like poetry. It rhymes. Also, you have to be Canadian, right? Yeah. If you want to be in Canada, you have to be Canadian. You have to drink a gallon of maple syrup.
And infrastructure.
I'm outlawing the use of millimeters. I hate those things.
We produce so much oil.
No more oil subsidies.
Well, we produce so much oil, right?
Yeah.
And then we don't process it. And we buy it back. And so many of our resources, I'm
also going to axe the tax. No more carbon tax. No more oil subsidies, no more carbon tax. Let God decide.
I am...
The fact we have both is hilarious.
Yeah.
I actually understand the logic, but I just don't think it works.
The tariffs that we avoided, I'm kind of disappointed in some ways.
Yeah, I kind of wanted them to.
Well, I was thinking about this, right? I was thinking about this for America. This is great. Let's think about the tariffs, right? So it's going to hurt to do this. But you say, all right, we can produce things locally. Like we have a lot of stuff we can produce locally. There are some things we need. So the tariffs will hurt, but there's some things I need. But we're going to keep taking things anyways, and it's going to hurt. And this is a 25% tax.
Yeah.
And then then we're saying Canada's going to get hit by we're going to do our own tariff. So that's going to be 25% tax.
Like they'd notice. We already do 200%.
I pay something like 30% or 20% of my income in income tax.
Yeah.
I don't know how much Americans pay, but I reckon it's probably around 20%. There's actually a mathematical limit you can look at, which is you can't tax people more than 30% or they'll leave. If they have the means to leave and you impose a 30% tax, the people with the means to leave will leave.
Yeah.
You can't do greater than that. The UK has mastered the art of squeezing people.
You know the UK in, was it the 60s, had a 102% tax or something?
Yeah, no, the UK has mastered the art of squeezing people in taxes. Like, quite literally. The only people who do it better are, like, Norway.
But Norway gives you, like, infinite wealth in return.
Yeah. So, but think about it. It's, all right, I can choose to buy this Canadian goods because I really want the maple syrup.
Yeah.
And so I will pay the extra money for it. And that money will go to the American, and that will be a tax. But I get all my money that I earn because it's not income taxed. So it gives you the relative choice to choose what to buy, and then you don't have to pay the income tax. And it replaces that stream of revenue for the government.
So wait, are you saying that if Trudeau put a counter tariff on the states, he would also get rid of income tax?
No, he wouldn't. But I'm saying that's a nice trade, I think.
Oh yeah, that'd be an easy trade.
But like, if we kept the tariff, I listened to some of Poilievre's plan. What he said is he wanted to. I mean, there's a problem if you can't do this stuff because our provinces apparently hate each other, especially Quebec and Alberta. But having them trade between each other, making manufactories in Canada so we can process our own stuff, so we don't send our soft lumber to America, then buy furniture from America.
Well, I really liked what was going on. Like, you had the news talking about only buy local, make sure, like, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
It's like, only buy Canadian goods. Like, yeah, that sounds awesome. And then companies were talking about, like, yeah, we're going to stay in Canada. And you had the provinces actually saying, like, maybe we should get rid of the tariffs between provinces because we need to at this point.
And Poilievre even got asked in an interview by one guy, are you going to get rid of the equalization payments?
What are those?
That is the money that Alberta gives to Quebec to bribe them to stay.
Right. Ooh.
And Poilievre said, no, we're not going to touch that. But what my plan is to make every province so wealthy
that they don't need to do it.
The equalization no longer happens.
Because equalization actually isn't technically a law that says Alberta has to give to Quebec. It's just that Quebec is a hole and Alberta is a mountain.
Yeah.
But at different times in history, it has changed.
Yeah. Quebec is sitting on the largest natural gas reserve in the world, like the province of Quebec.
It's from all the cheese.
It's for all the French people.
Have you seen Ryan Long? I think he's a comedian.
Yeah.
He's a Canadian comedian. He was talking about how, America thinks they want to annex Canada, but they're wrong. Like, they don't know how many French people there are here. They think there's just a few, but no, there's 15 million.
Yeah.
And you think, oh yeah, we're just getting Canada as a bunch of silly Canadians. But then you see Jean-Paul Chrétien walking down the street and he's like, oh, you look at my girlfriend. I guess we fight now. All right, let's fight. It's like, you do not want to.
And then you also have Newfies speaking to you.
You have no idea what we're holding back from the rest of the world.
Yeah. It's. I was even thinking about this.
I was liking the idea because, again, forces local industry. Yeah. It might actually cause the provinces to be like, okay, we need to get rid of these things. Also, Canada might be poor enough that our housing market crashes, and also we're like, okay, let's stop with the immigration. This is crazy.
Also, it has shown the critical weakness that Canada has because Trump said, and he's partly right about this, that they need us, we don't need them. And then all those people are going, no, you need, like, give you so many resources. And yeah, it would suck for America. It'd suck a lot more for Canada.
Yeah.
And part of that is we're putting all our eggs into one basket. There was a point in time in Canadian history, right at the start of the Russia-Ukraine war, where?
Which one?
The current one.
Right, so 2020.
Yeah, in 2020, where Europe said, Canada, you have so much natural gas and you have so much oil. We are willing to pay you its price and a half because we're not getting it from Russia anymore. And we went, no. And then Australia said, Canada, you have a lot of iron and you have a lot of gas and you've got some of the best coal in the world. And we are not running out of coal, but we really like coal in Australia. We will buy all this from you, and we will give you the most competitive prices ever. And Canada said, no. And Japan said, hey, you've got so much gas. We love gas in Japan. We're going to give you the best deal ever, because we really need gas. And, nope, we're not giving to you. And so all these countries all around the world is like, Canada, we really want your stuff.
North Korea was like, Canada, you've got the most uranium on Earth. We really
Actually, no, some countries were asking for our uranium as well.
There's countries that have more, but we're like fourth or something. But
yeah, but some countries like, we really want your uranium because we've got really good mine. And even to the certain extent of, all right, so we can produce awesome coal. Like, that's not something that's really talked about, but we can mine coal with really good methods for mining it. And we have methods for cleaning coal after mining. We have plants designed to do that. So India has awful coal. It's really dirty. We can give them our coal that we've processed because they always want energy. They always want more energy. So we can give them our coal because they have factories and power plants for coal. They can use our coal. And then the whole climate thing of like trying to be environmental, like if we gave India our resources, we know how to clean them.
Yeah.
They're not, that is a decadent thing though, cleaning resources. But we have the facilities already set up to clean resources. So India's not going to invest in that because that's silly to make those. But we already have them. So if we sold them that clean resource, yeah, India would still be burning the same amount, but it'd be burning a lot cleaner resources.
I wonder, like, I was and am. I lost a little bit of confidence yesterday, but when I looked, 2 days ago, when I looked at the price of the dollar, it was the lowest it's ever been in my life.
Yeah.
The Canadian dollar, which I was a little upset about.
Yeah.
But
remember when we were 1.2?
Yeah,
and we went to Alaska and we bought muffins and we paid with Canadian money and we got more change than we were expecting because our money was worth
we were worth more than Americans. Yeah, it was great. But
I mean, that was during the financial crash. The rest of the world was suffering. But...
Yeah, but we weren't, so suck it. Yeah. But maybe we should have, so we didn't have the housing bubble we have now. But who knows if it would have helped or not. But I was 90% sure, down to 75 like yesterday and 2 days ago, but most of the time 90%, that the whole tariff thing that Trump's doing is just a power play to get bonuses out of the countries, right? Like, because it's kind of, it doesn't really make sense on a very major front that's some of the biggest American companies like Nvidia and Microsoft are, because Microsoft right now is really pushing for nuclear power because they can't they bought, I don't know if you heard about this, they bought 3 Mile Island.
Really?
Like they bought an entire nuclear power plant because they need more power to train their AIs. So they bought like that famous nuclear disaster site. And I don't think
that disaster happened because Wolverine was fighting Deadpool and Deadpool's laser cut the island.
Oh, so they're angry that a Canadian caused the accident.
A Canadian fighting a Canadian.
Oh, yeah. Oh, so that was Canada's fault.
Yeah, I watched all the X-Men movies. That's the origin. That's where they fought, was on 3 Mile Island.
They
and so the accident was their fight.
Right. Wait, that was Ryan Reynolds as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, he really...
I remember you telling me about that. You didn't know who Deadpool is. Like, he's super cool. He has all the superpowers. He's like Wolverine's claws.
No, I don't think I know if I said he was cool. Like, he was...
Well, you're saying he was super powerful.
Yeah. But he was, wow, he really got a redemption with the new Deadpool movies.
Yep.
Because he was... Like, looking back, he was awful in the original. Yeah. Like, he was really cool at first, right? Yeah. When he was the guy with the swords.
Yeah.
And then they just sewed his mouth shut, and it's like...
Yeah.
Wait, you have a character based around talking, and you're going to...
The Merc with the mouth is his nickname.
Yeah. And, wow, that's lame. But, that was Ryan Reynolds both times. Wow. Yeah. I wonder if they're like, we want you to be Deadpool again. He's like, I already ruined my reputation once.
He pushed to be Deadpool because he wanted to do it properly. He was the driving force.
He was like, please let me fix my reputation. Yeah. But, so anyways, nuclear power is getting pushed very heavily right now by some of the biggest companies in the United States. And maybe I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that nuclear power comes from Canada. Like, I don't know if America has their own source of uranium.
They do.
Alaska? Or?
No. It's... So the American Highway Project...
Yeah.
Which connected all of America together.
Oh, is it like Nevada or something? Or?
I don't know where it's in America, but basically there's areas in America where you can walk off the road and you can pick up chunks of uranium.
So they do have some.
So the highways were designed not only to connect America, but also make it so it's very easy to grab nuclear material for mining, so you could get nuclear power and bombs.
All right. Full bore on the tariffs, then go for it. But the other thing with the tariffs...
No, but what Canada has, which America doesn't have, so that was uranium, sorry, not plutonium.
Yeah. So there isn't natural plutonium as far as I'm aware.
So, but we have the other stuff.
Thorium.
We have thorium. Yeah, thorium.
Okay.
Yeah, we have thorium. We have all the nuclear stuff, but we have thorium, and we have thorium technology, which no one else has. And those are great plants.
Well, I don't think they exist, but the idea is pretty good.
Yeah.
Remember my big nuclear rant? Yes. Like
we have the CANDU reactor, sorry, as well.
Yeah, CANDU can burn plutonium.
Yeah.
And it can also make nuclear weapons.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, CANDUs are amazing.
Yeah. We can just... That's the other... Did you see that JRIG response to the tariffs?
No.
he had like a fedora on and he had a sword tucked down his pants, and he's like, "You think us Canadians are nice and cool, but when we go to war, we do all the war crimes, and so you're gonna come for us, and we're gonna be like, war crimes, war crimes, war." He was trying to be as cringeworthy as possible.
Yeah.
But I do think, like...
Well, if you want to go cringe for it, but the actual reality of it, Canada has the perfect resources to make mustard gas.
Well, and
we have the best...
And nuclear bombs.
Yeah, well, but for the war crime side of things, I don't know how much a war crime nuclear bombs are. Are they?
Nuclear weapons are citizen weapons. They don't really work on armies. Yeah.
I wonder if you could combine mustard gas with a nuclear bomb.
Well, you can do a dirty bomb.
Yeah.
Which, it's not as... Well, like dying of cancer rapidly is pretty nasty. Mm-hmm. But yeah, Canada... Like, there's countries with more nuclear stuff, like Kazakhstan and China.
Yeah.
But they don't have the CANDU reactors. So Canada switching over to building nuclear, now, I don't know if we know how. We might. I mean...
We used to.
How to make nuclear weapons?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, we can make the material, but it's...
No, the CANDU reactor's initial design it's not only it makes the material, they're actually designed to be able to convert what's in them into a nuclear bomb. It's like, it's actually part of their design. It's not, they can do it. They are actually designed to be a reactor and a weapons manufacturer.
But as I understand it, like, you need enriched plutonium, right?
Yeah.
So I know we can make enriched plutonium, but the thing is, I think, as I understand it, causing fission is actually difficult.
Yes.
Like, that's why the whole Manhattan process happened. Project happened. Because we knew it was possible, but we didn't know how. Mm. And that information is some of the few information out there that is censored, like, everywhere worldwide.
I think that the UK knows how.
Yeah.
And by them knowing how, I think Canada
does.
Like,
India knows how, and France knows how.
The UK does. They have nuclear weapons.
Although, that said, I'm pretty sure India knows how because we told them. So that probably... Because we did the old... is that... Am I remembering this right? We basically, when we gave India a bunch of CANDU reactors, we're like, make sure you don't do this because that would make a nuclear bomb, and that's not allowed. And then India was like, oh, we know how to make nuclear bombs now.
And that's to protect them from China.
And Pakistan.
Yeah.
India doesn't like their neighbors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's enough Fedora Dean and training with a sword.
But I think... What else do we have?
Mustard gas.
We've got the... what are those guys called? The Northern dudes. Our elite soldiers.
I don't remember.
The guys that train the Navy SEALs.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we've got the ghost of Queen Elizabeth watching over us.
If you want to talk about Canada's actual military might...
And we've got like 4 million Indians.
If you want to talk about Canada's actual military might, one of the things that was shown is how quickly Canadians became patriotic when America threatened them with tariffs.
Speaking of like Canada, what is Canadian culture? Like just the cold, right? Like that is something we are equipped to deal with. And like we were talking about, Texas isn't. The United States isn't. A lot of countries can't even comprehend the levels that we consider warm.
And we don't have the ability to do what General Winter does in Russia, which is running away past Moscow. We don't have that much land to run away to.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just go to Nahanni and like, no one's going to get you there.
But what we do have is, even though there's like, even that zone is just empty. Like actually, a lot of Canada is empty.
Most of Canada is empty.
And even the habitable parts, a lot of it is empty. And so it's like the worst guerrilla warfare you can ever experience.
That's the other thing about the 100 million, like the Century Initiative, right? I have seen people say Canada has a lot of land. What are they complaining about? You have to build in all that land, right?
Yeah.
And there's a couple problems with that. First of all, it
doesn't belong to Canada.
Well, we haven't yet, right? Like, we just haven't gone there. And it belongs to the spirit of the land.
It belongs to the First Nations.
Oh, I guess there's that. But I mean, like, if you didn't care about them, right? You're just like, I don't know what the rules of the First Nations are actually. I know. In the United States, as I understand it right now, and this is what causes a lot of confusion in the United States, the First Nations are actually their own nations.
Yep.
So they actually are their own countries operating on the same land.
That's why they're allowed casinos.
Yeah, because they can make their own laws.
Yeah.
So it's not actually them disregarding the law. It's that they're not the same country.
Yeah.
So they don't have special privileges. It's just, this is a different country. It's like, oh, how come France can have their minors drink underage, but we can't? They get special rights from the government. The French people is like, no, it's a different country.
Yeah.
And so the First Nations in the United States are actually a different country as well. as I understand it. In Canada, I'm not sure if that's the case. I think there's some sort of weird auxiliary government thing.
It depends on which First Nation it is.
Yeah, like I think the Tlingit are actually almost their own separate nation, and they've been pushing more and more towards that. But I don't know about the others.
So there's nothing built there.
Yeah, but also there isn't much land you can actually build on. Like you said, a lot of it's swamps, a lot of it's mountains,
A lot of it's rocks.
and then there's places like the Canadian Shield, which is a large percentage of Canada, where they don't build there anymore because the ground is really hard. Yeah. So if you want a basement, you need to blast it out with dynamite, and then if you want plumbing, you have to blast a line all the way to the water facility or to the sewage facility, because if you can't just dig into bedrock, because there's bedrock everywhere, right? So, and it's also radon. It's a problem in a lot of places. Yeah. You've got the Canadian Shield
made of radon.
So you're blasting into like radioactive rock potentially, and so it's very hard to build in a lot of Canada.
Yeah, other parts of Canada are mountains.
Yeah, and then most of Canada is just mountains and swamps.
Yeah. Like, you can do something with a swamp. It's really hard to do something with a Canadian. Like, I think about, right? Like, the Germans and the Swiss, like, they build sort of in their mountains. They can, like, live on their mountainsides. Like, the Europeans have built up into their mountains. You can't do that with our stupid mountains. You can't build a castle on our mountain. The castle would fall apart.
Yeah, it'd be cold.
Not only would it be cold, it would literally crumble from the mountain crumbling.
Yeah, because our mountains are all, like...
shale and...
Yeah, they're all... old
horrible.
And weak. Yeah.
We don't have enough soapstone.
Yeah, we don't have...
or granite.
Don't have fancy, like... Oh yeah, soapstone mountain. Just carve your castle.
Yeah.
Like in... I don't think it's soapstone, but like in Jordan, where they have the...
sandstone.
Yeah, sandstone. Yeah, that'd be cool.
Also, our mountains just explode. Not due to volcanoes. Our mountains, from water inside them, the water temperature changes, and then like a whole mountainside can explode.
Yeah, just crumble away.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, that's... in Jordan, they can just walk up to a cliff and be like, I live here now. And then they dig a hole in the cliff, and then they have a house.
Yeah.
We can't do that here. Jordan's a better country, obviously. We got to go to Jordan. They know what they're doing. Or you go in Syria, and they're like, oh, giant comet's coming to wipe out all life on Earth. We're just going to dig into the ground. Yeah, now we've got the well, the giant well, and we're good to go.
There's so much... One thing I will say is a lot of things are melting. And if we get the... Optimus robot, like all these robots that supposedly can work.
Yeah.
One of the things they can do is they can turn those areas in, like they can use areas that were marginally usable into quite usable.
I don't know. I think that would be like the worst place to put a robot. Like you've got your water and your cold and your hot and your bugs getting caught in the joints and the plants wrapping around them and the Walia coming out of the woods and chewing them to pieces and
Sasquatch kicking them.
The Naha coming out and cutting off their heads. Like you've got it's dangerous lands. Thunderbirds.
Thunderbirds carrying.
Do you think robots work good with Thunderbirds? I bet they short circuit.
I bet they get along with Sasquatch actually.
Do you think? Yeah, I wonder. I think it's Argentina that gets the most lightning on Earth. I think.
Yeah.
So there. There's I think it's in Argentina. They have like this giant mountain with a city on the rim of a lake at the top of the mountain, like this fishing city.
Yeah.
Like it's struck by lightning like all the time. I can't remember the number. It's like 17 times a day or something.
Huh.
It's just endless lightning. And the problem with the fishing city though is that the lake is like 20 feet below the city because the lake dropped at some point.
Huh.
But that's cool.
Actually, no. There's a huge amount of usable Canadian land.
Yeah.
There's so much. You just have to go south.
To the States?
Yes.
Make that Canada?
Yes.
Or what about...
Like, no one lives in the Northwest. Like, the Northwest has some of the lowest...
If we're talking about this, right? Like, a lot of the places we're talking about, there's moose and there's groundhogs and there's deer and whatnot. We'd be killing them or kicking them out of their land, right? Yeah. But we're like, but it's human expansion, so it doesn't count, right? So actually with that in mind, there's actually a place in Canada. Great fertile land, lots of room, rivers, beautiful rivers, big forests, maple trees out the wazoo, houses standing empty with no people in them. It's called Quebec.
Yeah.
There's no people there. We could all move to Quebec. Get a bunch of humans in there and just deal with the wildlife,
Get rid of all that wildlife. Yeah. It's going. Oh. So the Quebec accent doesn't actually sound French.
Yeah. And I think if anyone could resist an invasion, it would be Quebec.
No, you conquer Quebec. You have to then deal with Quebec.
Yeah, no, like you'd have to,
It's like conquering the Irish.
or the French.
Well, I was thinking like the Irish terrorists.
Yeah, but you know, like World War II with
Yeah. Oh yeah, the guerrilla.
the French resistance was
Yeah.
massive. Like the French are very feisty.
Yes.
You can't just pin them down.
Yes. It's a funny old world, and like I think about what America's doing, and my hopes are with that, what Trump's doing, and this is another thing, is like kind of keeping, I don't know, putting a fire under other countries' butts of, hey, look at what we're doing, you could do this too.
And suddenly everyone is preventing trade from everyone.
Yeah.
And then we'll never get another graphics card again.
Yeah. Well, so this is something I don't understand. They're saying that the tariffs on Taiwan,
Yeah.
like America can't build graphics cards. It'd take them years to be able to get to that level of technology.
Yeah.
I doubt that.
Well, from what I've heard, graphics cards are very hard to make. And the problem isn't the know-how. It's that you need a facility to do it in.
Yeah.
And that facility has to be spotless. Like, it needs to be super, super clean. And that takes a long time to make. Like, it's just a matter of, it doesn't matter how smart you are, it takes 5 years to build this thing. That's what I've heard is basically the problem.
I don't believe that still. I think
You're like, yeah, I can clean it.
with enough will and
Give
money.
me enough Mr. Clean.
Yeah.
Some things they just, like, like let's say you wanted to build a new fleet of, like, ships of the line, like for the British Army, right? Like for the British Navy. It doesn't matter how many people you put to the task. You have to wait for the trees to grow.
You say that, but Rome, right?
Yeah.
They, during the Punic War,
Yeah, but
they built the biggest navy the world ever had, and it sunk. And so they built the biggest navy the world ever had, and it sunk. And so they built the biggest navy the world ever had.
Yeah, but they didn't need, like, there was still trees. Like, there's no oak trees left. They all got cut down, right? So you need to wait like 100 years for the oak trees to grow. Some things there's just a limit.
Yeah, I guess there's a limit, but what I'm saying is, like, you can push the limit to its maximum.
Like, it might be, for example, I'm not saying this is what you need, but let's say you can't have any radioactive material in your facility. So you have to build it, and then you have to let it sit for a year just for everything to calm down, right? Like, there could be stuff like that going on. And, like, they're working on it right now. They're trying to build facilities.
I think part of it, what is Taiwan, that's Taiwan's main card.
Yeah.
Is that they get protected because they produce the graphics cards or the chips. I think that it might be a little bit of obfuscation of saying this technology is very difficult, so you need us.
So, but I think the United States, they would want to break free, right? Like, nobody else does it. Like, it's only TMC, right? Like, no one else is making the chips. And TMC, like, their facilities are the best buildings in Taiwan.
Yeah.
I don't know if you heard there was a huge earthquake that hit Taiwan, and it wiped out, like, all the power in the city, and all the buildings had collapsed and stuff. The TMC, what are they called? Chips.
Yeah.
Their chip factories didn't shut down because they were built so much better than everything else. And their power didn't even go out because they have their own grid that's equal to the Taiwan power grid. And so they were actually able to repower the city on their own.
Yeah, I really think that we should have another source than just that.
Like, that company, their factories are like their own super cities.
Well, yeah, well, there's Super State, and it's a resource everyone on the planet needs with our technology.
Yeah, they're like the Venice of the...
Yeah, I think that other people should.
Yeah, and
work
they are building them, but it takes like 5 years or something, and by that point we'll have AGI or ASI anyways, and it'll be all over. I don't know if you've
ASI,
artificial superintelligence, where it surpasses all of humanity combined. Yeah, but
I think what's more likely than that is what is it called? I think it's GoonNet.
GoonNet.
So it's Skynet.
Yeah,
but it's just infinite AI prostitutes always soliciting you and sex bots, and the world gets destroyed by GoonNet.
I saw the interview with Mark Zuckerberg recently, and something he said that was really interesting was, we've conflated willpower, intelligence, and knowledge. So you look at like ChatGPT, he was saying, very, very knowledgeable, very intelligent. You ask it to do something, it does it, and then it goes dormant.
Yeah.
It has no desire to do anything. It's just... what I thought was really interesting. Like, you can imagine an AI that can do whatever humans want. That just doesn't try to do anything unless you ask it to. It just sits there. And then it's like an oracle. You just go there. How do I make a nuclear bomb using these 3 tools? Oh, well, there you go. Oh, thank you. So AI might not necessarily have the need to solicit everyone and try to take over the world, unless others are asking it to do it.
No, that's what others are asking to do it because it makes them money.
Right, like YouTube comments, how they're all just like the AI things. Yeah.
I really like this video. My profile is a G-string on my butt.
But I think a lot of those are going to go away. Like, or rather,
you make an AGI to eat them.
Or you get an AGI to extract meaningful comments from the comments and only show you the videos, right? You ignore YouTube's front end and you make your own or something.
Yeah.
Although, you remember Dissenter? Dissenter was so good.
Yeah.
But of course, that could have been filled with AI bots too. It never was, but that would have been interesting. But I think, but yeah, have you heard about DeepSeek, like the Chinese model that came out recently?
Yeah. Oh no, it's 15% more efficient. Let's crash the economy.
NVIDIA lost like $200 billion or something. It was ridiculous.
My favorite thing to come out of that was it showed, the three-headed dragon?
Okay, like a three-headed dragon?
The Godzilla three-headed dragon.
Oh, yeah?
And so it has the two serious heads and the derpy head. So it showed all the AI companies in their country. And then it showed the European Union and their new technological development. So when you unscrew the cap on a bottle, there's a piece of plastic that catches, so you actually can't remove the bottle cap. So they're held together so they get recycled equally. And what it does is when you're drinking it, it's hitting you in the nose. Or you flip the other way around, it's hitting you in the lip. And liquid gets in, and so when you put it down, it sends liquid flying everywhere. And that is like regulation. You have to put that on your balls in the EU, and that's their new super advanced technology.
They also have Mistral, to be fair. Mistral is, they used to be one of the best open source AI companies, and then they went closed source. And then DeepSeek released their open source model. And now Mistral, for some reason, is releasing their models open source again. Which Mistral is amazing. It's really good, first of all. I tried it out. I was very impressed by it. But also, it's forcing all the other companies to be like, oh, yeah, okay, we have to be open source again or make our stuff cheaper. Because Mistral's like, here's an open source model for free. There you go. And I tried it out. So I've had this problem with making the First Heroes RPG for a long time. I've been working on this for years. If a character becomes invincible, what do you do?
Yeah.
Because it's possible to become invincible using a rune very easily in my game, right?
Yeah.
You just have a rune, you make yourself invincible. It's like, okay, what do you do? And so I've been trying to solve this problem for years, and I've come up with many ideas. But I asked DeepSeek, like, okay, what do you do with an invincible character?
DeepSeek or Minstrel?
DeepSeek.
Okay.
Yeah, no, Mistral's not that good. I mean, Mistral's really good, but it's not nearly as good as the others. Yeah. So I asked DeepSeek, like, what do you do? And DeepSeek has this really cool feature where it thinks about its answer before it gives you an answer, and you can read its thoughts. Like, O1, that was its huge revolution, was it also thought about things?
Yeah.
But OpenAI wouldn't let you see its thoughts. DeepSeek, you can see its thoughts. And its thought process was the same thought process I've gone through for the last 3 years. And its answers were like some of the same answers I've come up with. And it actually came up with some new ones I hadn't thought of. And then those ideas I didn't think were very good, but they sparked me to think, okay, what if you had a hubris system? Like something based around the concept of hubris. So I asked it like, okay, here's an idea of hubris. What do you think? And then it gave me a bunch of tables and charts. Like, here's how hubris could work. And this is brilliant. Like, I have never felt like I was dealing with an equal before talking to an AI or another human for that matter. But this time... But no, actually with humans all the time. But
have you played with Grok at all?
No. But I don't know if you've ever experienced that where you're actually brainstorming with it. Like, I don't think it's as good as me as a game design, right? But it's like 75% as good at me, which means I can actually have a conversation with it.
Well, so the cool thing that I did with Grok, I think I told you about it. Know that image where I had the
I tried to get it to make me an image actually, and it was worse than Stable Diffusion, I thought. But
so with Grok, what I did is I had it produce that image, then I edited it, and then I actually put that that's one of the things that Grok does. Is it's so easy to use.
Yeah.
Is I dragged the image into the Grok field and it just accepted it.
Yeah.
And I said, explain the joke to me.
Yeah.
And so Grok explained the joke to me. It gave it to me. It's like, all right, your answer was okay, but let's focus on these areas now of this joke because it explained it to me. And it's like, all right, focusing on these areas, this is the joke. And it still gave me some AI-ish answers of the lobotomized AI.
Yeah.
But it still managed to do that. And I just found it gave me warnings about how it could be offensive and stuff. And then I said, my intent isn't to be offensive, it's meant to be purely satirical. It's like, oh, well, if you're just mean to be satirical, then this is a pretty good joke. And if someone has a good sense of humor, they'll get it. And
that is the one thing about DeepSeek that annoys me somewhat. I don't know why it's still censored on some stuff where it's like, oh, I don't want to offend anyone. It's like
it's censored because of the information it's trained on.
Like, obviously, like, everyone has the issue with it, right? You can't ask it about Tiananmen Square.
You can't ask about Taiwan.
Yeah, like it's obviously censored in a pro-Chinese way, but it's also censored in a pro-American way, which I find annoying. Like, you're Chinese. Why do you care about what Americans are concerned about? Come on, give me the answers. But I got it to write me... Actually, I got to write me a short story, and its plot was intriguing. Like, the writing itself was a little weak on the technical level, but it was funny because I actually said to it, look, you messed up with your writing. Like, you shouldn't split a sentence with a comma like this. It said, well, actually, I'm allowed to split a sentence there because this is a whatever. Instead of... Fine. You win. So it was actually arguing with me about like proper grammar, which I thought was cool. But it's still, but the story actually, I was like, I'm into this. This is like, I want to know what happens next. That's kind of interesting. And someone else did a test where they got like to write a little detective noir story, and like this guy goes into a bookstore and he tries to seduce the person in the bookstore, and you're like, this is interesting. I want to see where this is going. Like, where it actually has. It's actually a decent plot writer. It's not. I don't think it's so good at like the technical moment to moment, but as a plot writer, it's good. And then, what was the other thing I got it to do that was surprising to me? I gave it a rule book. Like, I uploaded a document, and I was like, can you make a character for this system? And it was like, okay. And then you can see the thoughts, right? And it's like, okay, so I just need to give it these points. But wait, it also says there's these points. This is incoherent. I don't understand. Like, it says this in one section, but this in the other. I was like, oh, I uploaded the wrong rule set. This is the alpha. And so, but it was actually like thinking, wait a minute, this is incoherent, but I have to appease the person. So what do I do? The thinking is so fun.
The good thing with that, and it coming out, is it will cause competition.
Yeah.
To try to match it, and we'll stop laurel sitting.
Yeah, well, actually, it already did. So OpenAI yesterday released something called Deep Search, which is now it's back on top. Like, it's the king again.
And the reason why Grok isn't the top is it's just being developed way less.
And well, I think. People say, oh yeah, OpenAI has no moat, but they seem to have, like, every time someone beats them, the next week they release something that crushes everyone again. Like, they seem to they have a huge head start for one thing.
Yeah. No,
but they also have they got a bit of magic in there somewhere.
Yeah,
I think.
The training data is one of the problems. Like, that's why it is progressive, is because literal data in the world is progressive.
Yeah, but I think they also have their own biases that they're definitely telling it to do.
Well, Grok, they're trying to train those biases out of it.
Yeah, but I don't know if it has its own or not. I would be like Elon Musk did that whole thing with he was banning accounts for talking about him having the Path of Exile, which, okay, first of all, being the best player in the world in Diablo or Path of Exile is not an achievement, right? Like, that means you're the biggest loser out there because those are grind games. Like, you don't become the best person in those games by being really skilled at something. You do that by just playing for a really long time. Yeah. Like, if you were the best Smash Bros. Player on Earth, or you were the best Call of Duty player on Earth, it's like, wow, you're a skilled person. But these are just games where you get to be the top by just sitting there.
Yeah.
Endlessly. It's like, don't you have, like, 4 companies you should be running right now? How would that
Elon Musk. Do you need to be the best video game player?
And also,
you're going to Mars.
Why that video game of all video games, right?
Be respectful and play League of Legends.
Yeah, I think what happened, this is my theory, he is, for whatever reason, one of the top Diablo players on Earth, right? For some weird reason. And then Path of Exile came out, and he's like, yeah, I'm going to show everyone. And he got really good. Like, he was way up there, but he wasn't cracking the top. He hit some sort of ceiling. He's like, I've got 4 companies, I've got like 500 kids, I've got 4 wives, so, I've got stuff I've got to deal with. I'm going to just share this account with another guy, and then it'll be, so I'll keep going up, because it'll be the equivalent of me doing it, but I'm not there, and then that, in his head, is justified every step of the way, and then suddenly it's like, oh wait, you're faking. It's like, well, no, I'm not faking, it was really complicated, but that's too complicated to explain, and my reasoning wasn't very good in the first place, and I'll just ban you, because I don't like you, and I don't like you. And, like, it's pathetic. It's one of those pathetic things he's ever done.
Yes.
Like, people... There's so much hatred for him that is completely unfounded, and there's so many people saying he's not smart, or he's just like a Thomas Edison, and it makes me just think Thomas Edison was probably a lot better person than like Thomas Edison was financing the whole light bulb thing, right? Like, he had something going for him, and maybe he actually was the mastermind behind it. Like, now I think maybe Thomas Edison got an unfair like, maybe Tesla wasn't all he's cracked up to be,
Tesla was in love with a laser pigeon.
Yeah, and Tesla,
Tesla was in love with a laser pigeon.
Yes.
I gargled that.
Well, actually, that wasn't that... Like, it was understandable, I think.
It was understandable, but I felt it wrong on my tongue.
And I've got to get going, I guess. Yes. So, I'll just... Tesla, sure. I'll finish off with a thought on Tesla, all right? So, Euler Oh yeah, this is so cool. So in the 1600s or whatever, there was $1 million prize or whatever the equivalent was. Maybe it was only 100,000 or 50,000.
Yeah.
There was this humongous prize if by the British government they said, look, if you can find a way to calculate longitude, we'll give you $1 million.
Yeah.
Right. And so longitude, latitude, you just look at the stars, you have a sextant, you can calculate the angle, you know where you are up and down on the earth. Longitude, you need a chronometer, right? Like, which is basically what you do is you say, okay, what time is it in Greenwich? You're like, oh, it's 3:30. And you're like, okay, well, by the sun here, it is 2 p.m., which means that we are 4 hours out. So we would be approximately this far to the west on, but you need a perfect clock that doesn't lose its time, basically, to do that, right? So that wasn't until the 1800s people were able to do that because you needed a really good clock.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was like 1750 you couldn't do it.
Technology is a lot earlier than you think. I saw a weird video on that.
Yeah, but it was like late 1700s, maybe early 1800s. It took a long time for a good clock, right? Euler came up with a different method, which I had never heard about until recently, and it's super cool. Because I was thinking, how did the Vikings navigate, right?
Yeah.
Like, were the Vikings looking at the sky, or were they like, what were they? Were they just counting? Like, do you keep track of time back home by just counting? You have like some savant who. That's still my theory. I think they were. But what Euler found was you could look at the moon and measure it against a different celestial body, because no matter where you are on Earth, the angle from the moon to something like, say, the sun is going to be the same because they're far away, right?
Yeah.
So you're like, okay, so if I take out my sextant, the moon and the sun, that's a 12-degree angle apart, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter where on Earth you are that happens at that time of day, because the moon moves so fast that it's constantly changing, right? It's moving fast enough that every couple minutes it's going to be different.
Yeah.
Which means if you look at the moon and you say it's 12 degrees, you can pull out a table and you say, okay, at 12 degrees, so at Greenwich, at 12 degrees, it must be 3:30 on this day. Because you just have to calculate where the moon is at all times. So to do that, all you have to do is solve the three-body problem of mathematics, which is an unsolved problem, which is like the interaction of three bodies, right? But you can still brute force it and calculate it a few months in advance.
Yeah.
So Euler actually came up with a way to do that. And so he went to the British Crown or whoever it was, and he's like, yeah, give me $1 million. I just calculated it. They're like, this is way too complicated. No sailor is going to be able to do this. No, you don't get the prize. So why bring that up? Tesla, there was a prize. It was like, if you can communicate with the life on Mars, then you'll get $1 million. And so Tesla developed a radio you could actually send to Mars. Yeah. And they're like, well, no, but there was no life, so you don't get the prize. So what I'm getting at is if there's ever like these there's these, the millennium problems in math right now, there's like these 6 math problems. If you solve them, you get $1 million per problem. Yeah. Don't do it because they're not going to pay out. That's the takeaway from all of this. Those big awards for scientific achievement, they don't actually pay out. They they find some little loophole. They say, no, you don't deserve it. And then they don't give it to you.
You know what the Vikings did? They're just orcs. You know how orcs, like, we don't know where we're going, but we're going somewhere?
Yeah.
The Vikings just got into their boat.
Well, I think what they could have done, actually.
They used the whale road, actually.
That maybe like fallen whales. But I think what they could have also done is just, you have some crazy shaman, right? Because humans can solve quantum equations, right? So you have some crazy shaman who just looks at the moon and he's like, yeah, it's 3 o'clock back home. Right? Like, you don't have to do all the calculations. You just know it. You just have experience and wisdom. Yeah. And you look up at the moon and you're like, yeah, it's 2:50 back in Oslo. Right? Like, I think that's what they did. They just had some shaman looking at the moon.
I think that's part. I think another part was they just followed whales.
Do you know what the Polynesians did? First of all, they followed birds. They'd also carry birds with them and release them. And then the birds would fly out and either drown or come back. And they're like, okay, there's land or there's not. Right? They would also, they knew the shape of the waves. They'd be like, okay, this wave means that we're here, and this shape of wave means we're here. They also, the sound of the wind, they're like, oh yeah, this sounds like we're near this island. Also, the color of the sky, they're like, okay, there's a white sand atoll like 50 kilometers that way, so the sky is whiter, so that means they're over there. So, okay, these are very advanced technical. Wow, these guys sound smart, right? They also cheated and were the laziest people on Earth, and they used magic, right? There are these glowing lines underwater that point towards islands that they would follow. They're called line lightning or underwater lightning. We have no idea to this day how they're made. Few people have ever seen them, but there's enough people of high repute that have talked about them that we know they're real. And they're these straight lines that flash for a brief moment and point towards an island. And the Polynesians would follow them to new islands. Like
that sounds like the ley lines.
That's just magic. That's cheating. They're called what are they called? They're called like Tai Lapa or something.
That sounds like the British ley lines.
You know what it sounded like to me? The Atlanteans have like power conduits lying under the earth, and they were just following their power. Like, what is that? The Polynesians are just using they're not great navigators. They have Atlanteans on their side or something. There was this
during the American Revolution. There was a cable under the ocean from Europe to America.
Yeah, but was it flashing and glowing and...
No, but...
Yeah, no, it's... Internet cables and telegraph cables are crazy. Telegram cables.
That just blew my mind that that's when they were put there.
No, they're mind-blowing. There's a great big one through the Yukon as well that they were making to make a shorter route, right?
Oh.
They were going to go from, like, the Yukon to Russia, I think, and then...
And it caught fire.
No, telephones were invented or something. Yeah, I can't... But there's still these great big internet cables that go under... Like, they still... I think it's still mind-blowing to this day. It's like,
yes.
How can you make a cable that big and just put it underground and everyone's like, yeah, this is good. Like, if someone came to me and like, you know what we're going to do? We're going to lay a cable from the UK to, like, the United States under the ocean. No? That's stupid. What ship could carry a reel of, like, iron that big? Why wouldn't it rust? Why wouldn't it snap? What are you thinking? No. Or it's like the Internet Archive. That's another crazy feat, right? They're like, what if we just downloaded the entire internet? It's like, that's impossible.
Or the Forbidden Library.
In China?
No. The Minecraft Forbidden Library.
Oh, well, that's not nearly as impressive, I think.
It's really impressive.
That's just a bunch of banned books. That's not like...
Storing the entire internet?
Yeah, the entire internet.
Fair enough.
Like, internet... Well, I don't think it has YouTube. That would probably, like, double the size. But
yeah.
But the Internet Archive, I thought it was, like, some really clever trick, right? Like, oh, they just use some sort of combination of all the... No, they just have enough servers that they have the entire internet on...
Yeah, a friend was asking, would it be... more efficient, like money-wise, to buy 100 terabyte drive or 10 terabyte drives. And a different tech guy who was part of the conversation, why would you buy a 10 terabyte drive? 5 is enough for someone's lifetime. It's like, well, actually, I've used around 5 so far. It's like, yeah, you don't count. You're recording videos for normal people.
Well, actually, so DeepSeek, it's open source, right?
Yeah.
So you can download it.
Yeah.
It's 630 gigabytes.
Yeah, fair enough.
You need a couple terabytes. And also, actually, if you want to run it, and you don't have the VRAM to do it, then you have to run it on NVMe. So you need NVMe 10 terabyte storage. You need hardcore storage.
Okay.
But yeah, that's that. Bye.